Hello, my name is Delaney Corlosquet. I'm a member of the DevPortal Awards organization team. I'm here to introduce you to the jurors for the 2021 DevPortal Awards. Our jurors this year are independent of the DevPortal Awards organization. They are experts in their fields and carried out their activity in a vendor and gateway neutral way. This year, they tackled 49 developer portal nominations over 15 categories. To achieve this, they were split into 3 working groups with the responsibility of 5 categories each and returned to collectively select the final overall winners. This year's jurors have expertise that spans business development, UX, technical writing, design, development, marketing, and API strategy. Our jurors are senior level managers, directors, speakers, writers, consultants, and strategists. Last year, I had the task of interviewing just 3 jurors, but this year, with 11 jurors, we present this interview in 2 parts. Our first group of jurors were tasked with evaluating developer portals for design, developer experience, community pages, and innovations. We have Sophie Rutard here, who has been working as an API strategist for Euler Hermes of the Allianz group. Sophie, which nominee stood out for you?
There was a number of very nice portals, but if I have to choose, it's actually Twitter. And I can't really explain why, but it catched me somehow. There was something very natural to look at it and to simply like it. So
Thank you. We also have Michael Meng, our resident academic juror. He's a professor of applied linguistics at Merseburg University of Applied Science. Michael, which category gave you the most challenge and why?
That's really a difficult one, but I think the one that was really a challenge is DX innovation. Of course, developer experience is something that we all know is very important. It's a concept with multiple connections to other important areas. But the innovation part caused the most important challenge to me. So what is an innovation? What is an area where we need improvement? What is the next big thing that can be tomorrow's standard? And yeah, this category kind of forced all of us to think about our understanding of innovation and about things that need to be addressed by developer portals in the future.
Thank you. And then we have Katalin Nadjot, who is a director of UX at Platform OS. Which nominee stood out for you, Kata?
Thank you. So it's really a hard question, but I try to think it through, and I like to mention Plate's developer portal from a design point of view. They revamped the documentation site in a really nice and consistent way, and their micro animations are making the site more friendly. However, they kept the focus on the functionality.
Thank you. So as a jury group, one of the awards that you were judging was the Best International and Localized Dev Portal, for which we had 3 nominations. What were some of the criteria that was used to determine the winner?
First and foremost, I think this is one of the categories that really deserve more attention and one of the issues that deserve more attention, because on the one hand, of course, API business is typically a global business, right? And so you really have to think about a global audience. On the other hand, of course, you not only have to serve the needs of a global audience, but you also have to think about the business that your audience is doing, which is also global, of course. And therefore, one of the first things we considered was business-wise, whether the API offering, the API portal would support users in kind of filtering and selecting features and functionality in terms of whether that applies to a certain region. I mean, this is most obvious for fintech companies, for example, who may offer features that will work in one region of the world, but not in others. Apart from that, of course, it's about serving your global audience, which first and foremost means that you have to offer content in different languages. You have to support your audience in selecting the locale, so language and region they are working in. And then, of course, there's other things that are important and that perhaps will gain more importance in the future, like will your dev portal be able to automatically detect the region that your user is currently in and adjust your offering kind of automatically. And there's other dimensions to localization and an international offering that have to do with the fact that English is still the language that is used most often, of course, and you can expect that your audience has a certain level of proficiency, but the level can vary a lot, right? And you really have to think about how you can address your audience and how to serve the needs at those very different levels they have. And so that means that you have to think about easy language, plain language, and support of language through, for example, appropriate visualizations. Of course, this kind of relates to other dimensions and other categories like accessibility, but still that was kind of a very important criteria for this category, localization and international developer portal as well.
Thank you, Michael. Another award that you as a jury had to select was the Best New DX Innovation Award. What did you define as the standard for innovation in 2021, and how did applicants consider themselves innovative? So what was the difference between how the jury saw it versus like how the actual nominees who provided us with answers in a questionnaire, would see themselves?
Well, I would, and I think Michael mentioned it earlier on. It was difficult to select a candidate in this category because innovation is moving on, and what is innovative today will be possibly standard tomorrow. So we had a lot of things which had very good filtering options to make it really easy to find the APIs that you need for your use case. And yet we didn't feel them as really being innovations because we saw them widely spread. And so we then finally said to ourselves, the winner in innovation should be the one really surprising us. And we had these things on the onboarding journey, for example, where the onboarding journey automatically recognized our company and address details with a background check, obviously, very nicely done. Then we had e-learnings, but really greatly done e-learnings integrated in the developer portal. And these are really things that we had not seen in others, and which were really standing out for us then.
I can see the real joy when you're describing these experiences. So it must have been very fun as a jury to be discovering these.
It is.
Yeah. I think that was one of those challenges, or is one of those challenges, like addressing the information needs, the different goals that your audience brings to the portal. And I mean, this is a well-known issue, but new and innovative ways of solving that problem, which I think really is a problem, right? That was, an area where we said, well, we saw very cool solutions to that, and that kind of helped us finally also with the decision.
Thank you. Thanks for the answer. So our Best Accessible Dev Portal Award had 12 nominees. What set the finalists apart from the rest of the nominees? What advice would you give to next year's nominees?
Yes. So as you mentioned, a total of 12 great developer portals competed with each other in this category. So the following 3 guidelines helped us to define the ranking. First, we checked how the applicants defined their site related to accessibility. Why did they apply it in the first place? it was important to see if they are in line with the category definition. In this case, it was, of course, the definition of web accessibility. Quickly, I share this definition, so yeah, everybody know about this. Web accessibility means that websites, tools, and technologies are designed and developed in a way that people with disabilities can use them. This approach also benefits people without disabilities. For example, people using devices with different screen sizes or different input modes. Also, temporary disabilities goes into this category, such as broken arm or lost glasses, people with situational limitations, such as bright sunlight, or in an environment where they cannot listen to an audio, for example, or people using a slow internet connection also goes into this category. So we can tell that finalists understood accessibility and fit into the category descriptions well. Second, accessibility checkers showed informative and comparable numbers about the accessibility scores of the developer portals. We used Google Lighthouse, Wave, and A-Checker for this purpose. All of the provide explanations next to the scores and highlight the accessibility errors and problems of the sites. All finalists actually had outstanding scores in this, I can tell. And as a third step, we compared the extra accessibility related features of the outstanding developer portals, like tag writing structure, consistency, terminology, accessible language like gender neutral communication, and so on. So yeah, there were a lot of items, but we were able to make our group smaller and smaller based on this and highlight the winner. Related to the advice, what we can tell for next year's nominees. First, I believe, check the criteria of accessibility and explain in the DevPortal Awards questionnaire how your developer portal helps your users to access the content in every situation. Second, test your developer portal with accessibility checkers. If you find any problems, you can still fix them, so that's the good part. And also, it will be good for your users, and also it will be good for your nomination. So I believe that's it.
Thank you, Kata. That was a long list of testing and lots of things to verify there. So it sounds like you guys were incredibly thorough and not an easy task, but again, from the smiles on your faces, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Our next award had 5 nominees, and that was the Best Community Spotlight and Outreach. What would you say is the main beneficial take home of what you felt was necessary for community spotlight and outreach for developer portals?
Yeah, we saw a lot of things here, and linked a bit to the innovation, you see how this develops over time. So in the past, for your community management, you would probably have done, I don't know, an FAQ or a forum or a blog, but this is very far away from what we have seen. So we really see that the runners are investing heavily in being in touch with their communities. We've seen even a possibility for contributors to the portal to improve the content, to be then rewarded with sort of credit points that you can get. So you could get a rebate on the product, for example, to really incentivize your contributions. We have also seen portals which really did very segmented communities depending on the most common use cases or the type of users of the API that one could have. So, for example, it could be private persons or companies or non-profit organizations. And then the portal would accordingly propose dedicated communities. Twitter even allows you to create your own community, which is fancy. So you would have localized communities in, let's say, Berlin or Paris, and you can then really link the developers with each others. That's really beautiful to see, and it's very inspiring to learn from that and try to put this in our own portals also. It's really very, very sophisticated.
Thank you, Sophie. Anyone want to add to Sophie's answer, or?
Only that I think this category for me was most fun to judge and to talk about, to discuss. It was really, really amazing to see what ideas people out there generate in order to interact with their audience, in order to get people attracted, in order to keep people in the portal, and also to have the audience participate in kind of shaping the roadmap. That was also very impressive to see, right? How to get feedback, how to involve them in your thinking about what to do next and which direction your product should take.
Mm-hmm. Just one additional question, because from your answers, but did you see a difference between when there was a small community versus a large community? Because when you mentioned Twitter, they probably have like huge, massive community, whereas other portals probably have a lot smaller developer community. So did you see like a difference in terms of how this was handled?
Yes, I think there are definitely differences also in the budgets that one can have to actually create all these features, because they don't come alone. But you don't have to be Twitter to have great community works. We have seen this on many other portals, very nicely done, and really also in an innovative way, which is really inviting people to contribute and continuously improve the site for the benefit of all.
Thank you. So the final one that you judged, and we will be announcing the winner for this particular category in the second gala, actually. But the award for best design, it had 21 nominations. So how did you create your shortlist from 21 nominations? And do larger companies have an advantage over smaller companies, or do you see both holding their own?
Well, first and foremost, that was also a very, very challenging category, similar to DX innovation, because like developer experience, design is a very broad concept. And so first, we had to kind of clarify our understanding of that concept, and quickly found out that we agree on that there's kind of two types of meaning, a narrow one and a broader one. And the narrow one related to the visual appearance of the site, consistency, the look and feel. Is it modern? Is it intuitive? Is it appealing? Right, things like that. But then the broader meaning also relates to functional aspects. So does it serve the purpose appropriately? Does it make it easier for you to get the information you need? Does it support usability? Things like that. Well, with more than 20 nominees, you cannot just go on and kind of do a deep dig into every portal, although you would like to do that, right? So we did a two-stage approach here. We first kind of checked every developer portal nominated for that category and focused on our first impression. And we kind of used questions that customers would perhaps also typically use, like, can I find out what this API is offering? What are the main benefits I can draw from it? How to get started? Things like that. And then kind of use that to do some interaction with the portal and check your intuition about the look and feel, the visual appearance, and so on. And this led to, some would say, well, really cool, and others we would say, well, not bad, but perhaps in that category, not among the front runners. And we then arrived at a smaller list of, I don't know, 5 or 6 candidates where we all agreed on that they pretty good with this kind of first pass check, and then did a more thorough check and went deeper and checked using other questions, and finally discussed for quite a while to determine the winner. It was really a close race, and showing the high quality, showing, of course, also the different dimensions that you have to take into account here. But yeah, like all the other categories, it was a big learning effort, learning gain also here in that one. Regarding the second part of the question, similar to what Sophie already mentioned, I don't think there's kind of a correlation between company size and quality of the developer portal, or even say design, right? In fact, it could be that big companies say, well, people out there have to use my API anyway, so why care, right? So offer them something. And for small companies, it could be like the main asset. So they will really think hard about how to make it a success. But of course, we only found good examples. And actually, very often we had only a very rough understanding whether it's a small company, a big company. I mean, with Twitter, you have some sort of knowledge that you can bring into that, but many other nominees were where you had to do some background check first and see, are they independent, do they belong to a large company, things like that. But as I said, there's no correlation that I would emphasize here.
Thank you very much for joining me today for this interview. Our second group of jurors today had the challenge of tackling nominations, not only for developer experience, but for the under the hood operations and experience of technical writers managing content within developer portals. I'd like to introduce Lucas Rosenstock, is a software developer, technical writer, API consultant, and entrepreneur. Lucas, which category gave you the most challenge and why?
So, as you already mentioned, we had two categories, which we'll talk about later, about internal portals and processes. And those are a bit challenging to judge because since it's internal, we couldn't directly observe it, but we had to rely on the information and their self-description and the material that they provided us. But which I still think is a good proxy of how well their internal process, in how well they could present it to us.
Thank you. Bob Watson is a senior technical writer at Amazon Web Services. Bob, which category gave you the most challenge and why?
Well, for me, it was the reference docs, partly because they're so detailed and generally pretty extensive. And in this case, this year had so many entries, so we had the challenge of going deep and going wide in all the variations of and quantity of reference docs to evaluate. But it was a great experience. I mean, those are the kind of problems to have, is too many good entries.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Ellis Pratt, who's a director at Cherryleaf, a technical and UX writing services company based in the UK. So Ellis, a different question for you. Which nominees stood out for you?
What stood out, I had the privilege, along with Bob and some others who are jury members this year, to be a judge last year. And there was a difference this year, and there were some new features with some sites which we hadn't seen last year. And that was that they were taking into consideration onboarding and the developer journey. And in some ways were treating the API or the portal like it was an application. And there was much clearer process of what to do, where to start, that I didn't notice last year. And it made a few sites stand out as being really good for having those clear developer journey paths.
Thank you. And Tom Johnson is a senior technical writer working for Google. He's also behind I'dRatherBeWriting.com. Tom, which nominees stood out for you?
Well, a lot of the nominees were great. I really zeroed in on a lot of the getting started stuff with onboarding, and there are some excellent tutorials that really onboarded in different ways. Some provided more of a conceptual overview of the entire process. Others were breaking the getting started into like a more of a part one and part two. And I thought a lot of these approaches were innovative and worked well.
Thank you. So I'm going to move on to like our award questions. So for the award for Best Onboarding Developer Portal, there were 19 developer portals nominated. This is a huge number, unprecedented in DevPortal Award history. Tom, would you like to answer first? But what advice would you give to the many nominees who had great onboarding experiences but fell short?
Yeah. And I was putting together a few thoughts on this. I think, first of all, use standard terminology to refer to onboarding doc types. I think the most common name is like getting started. And when people would link to the getting started directly from their doc homepage or product overview, it made it really easy to find and get started. And if there was some kind of registration required, hopefully make that painless. Some registration processes ask too much information, required signing of agreements, or just too much of a hurdle to get going. But the biggest takeaway that I realized in looking at these getting started tutorials is that a good tutorial needs to strike a balance between giving you enough information to become familiar with the product, to actually learn something about the product and how you set it up and how you work with it, while also being concise and not having this endless tutorial that just duplicates the documentation. Some getting started tutorials were too skimpy. They were just like, here's how you authorize a call, make a call, here's your response, done. And it's like, well, what am I doing? What's the product about? What is this larger context and workflow? Kind of missed out on that. And then on the flip side, some sites just had too long of an onboarding, like it was multiple courses and so on. Like that's not quite the angle. So find a balance, give enough detail, but don't overwhelm the user. And then finally, this is your first impression with a user. You want to build confidence and inspire confidence in the docs. So if your getting started tutorial isn't accurate or doesn't help the user and they're not successful, what's the rest of their experience going to be like in the docs? Probably not great, right? So that first 15 minutes or hour or whatever that they're spending with their docs can make a huge difference in their attitudes and perceptions as they go through the rest of your documentation.
Thank you, Tom. So the Best API Reference Documentation and Support Award received an even larger number of nominees at 26. Bob, would you like to take this question? What was the process this year for narrowing down the nominations for this category? Were there reasons a nominee could rank higher or lower?
Yeah, no, this was quite an impressive turnout for that category. And like I said, having so many entries is a challenge, but it's the right kind of challenge, because it's great to see all the creativity and especially the improvement in some of the repeat entrants. But how we managed that was to agree on a rubric of customer experience centered categories on how we would evaluate the different topics. And we centered on things like navigation, appearance, the utility, how easy it was to use, and the completeness. And so with that, we looked at all of the entries that were submitted at a high level to sort them into finalists and not finalists. And then we went back and looked at the finalists in detail with a more critical eye with each of those categories. And then we came up with the winner. One of the things that we saw in the high scoring entries, which made it a bit of a challenge to find a clear winner, was in the usability and utility of the different sites. And the winners were consistently easy to use. They served their audience well, and they had an engaging design. And so it was really a challenge. But it was good to see something like reference topics getting that much attention by the companies that had submitted their entries. And so, I'm looking forward to next year's entrants because they just keep getting better.
Is there any advice you'd give for planning next year's 2022 awards?
Yeah, I'd encourage to look at the winners and see some of the techniques they applied. How was their design? How did they approach the navigation? It's all about making it easy to use and useful for the audience. And some of the winners and the runners up, really took a creative approach. So, learn what you can and just keep getting better each time.
I wanted to add on to a point that Bob mentioned about reference docs getting more attention. And I really think this is a noteworthy call out because in the API world 20 years ago, most of the outputs are just Java docs, Doxygen, standard documentation generators. And it's really, I mean, it would be hard to judge entries and so on with them all being Java doc output or something. But yeah, with this web API landscape, the approaches are so much more varied and innovative and lend themselves to more creativity. It's really kind of an interesting space to observe, to see, oh, this person is doing this, and that's kind of an interesting technique, how they're making it less seamless, and maybe another person is grouping things a different way and they've got their own design. So there's a lot more variety now in this reference landscape.
Thank you very much. So the next award that you all considered was the Best Developer Dashboard Award. Alice, I'd like to invite you to answer this one. Was it an easy decision for Best Developer Dashboard this year? And what, in your opinion, identified success? And I know you'll be speaking for everyone probably.
Actually, for this category, this was probably one where there were two candidates that stood out much more than the others. So in some ways, this was an easier one to find the winner and the runner-up compared to some of the other categories. The challenge with the dashboard is, do you create a blank canvas and get users to start from that point, or do you give them lots of choices? And for us as judges, we were essentially the type of user that had no previous experience of that particular API. So we were coming in without necessarily knowing a great deal about what the product did or any buzzwords. And so the ones that stood out, again, go back to what we were talking about with onboarding. And they treated the dashboard more like an application. There was a clear start here point. There was a path that we could say, okay, there are 5 steps that we need to do this, to get a result or to create a product. And they had that segmented away from the analytics and the configuration elements. Some of the other sites which weren't so successful, the registration could be quite complicated. You'd have just a blank screen and no guidance on what to do, or too many choices of where to go next. Or they assumed you knew certain buzzwords that we as judges, because we weren't in that industry, weren't familiar with. For the ones that stood out, they considered the beginner, they had that clear onboarding path again, and that's why they were the winner and the runner-up.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the Best Editorial Experience in a Dev Portal. There were 7 nominees in this category. Lucas, if you'd like to take charge of this question, what challenges did the jury have when judging the Best Editorial Experience in a Dev Portal category? Also, what was the ultimate value built into the process that ranked higher for portals running in this category?
Yeah, so the difficulty here was that we were not able to judge the process because we weren't in those teams and we can't see their editorial process on a day-to-day basis, but we had to rely on how they described it, and we would also have to judge, okay, how authentic is that what they say? Do they really do what they say they do if they follow the process? And so something that we also considered a value that that we used in ranking these portals was like, what kind of technical assistance do they have? Do they have some kind of automation which enforces the process? And well, if it's just is it just humans talking? And I'm not trying to discount the importance of people having conversation and bringing everybody together and decide how to create your docs and how to create your developer experience. But if it's just okay, we all get together and talk about it, then it's difficult to see, okay, are all stakeholders involved? So the automation, that could be something like docs as code, where you have some tooling and continuous integration to bring all the content together, to validate the content and to publish it. And also another thing that we saw was to use a lot of structured data to really enforce inside a content management system how to how to structure the data in ways that the process guides the content as well.
Thank you for the answer, Lucas. So the best internal dev portal was the final award that the four of you were looking at. And there were 7 nominations. And in addition to this, I believe we had to send them a questionnaire, because internal developer portals are, of course, proprietary. We can't look at them. And so 5 of those nominees answered the required questionnaire. So for the best internal dev portal, it being the most challenging to rank and a new category this year, what helped make the final decision for selecting the winner and the runner-up? And if we could go back and ask more questions or gain more access, what would you ask for to help you with the decision making?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a category where we had to judge without the first-hand experience, and I don't think that can be avoided here. One thing that we found is that there's a difference between an internal and an external dev portal, and I think that's something we looked at, because if you just have one developer portal where you publish your internal APIs and your external APIs, and then you have something like role-based access control or access management, where just, okay, we show those APIs. And I don't think for an internal dev portal that's enough, because I think in an organization, especially larger organization that has a lot of internal APIs, you need to manage the access. You need maybe some approval processes, so you need specific toolings to support your internal developers, and that's something we looked at, but it was sometimes difficult to determine, okay, how do the internal APIs differ from the external APIs? And the portal that we found out as a winner, they specifically had a good process to manage API access internally. And maybe that's something I would like to see next year, to really ask companies how does their internal dev portal differ from the external, and how do they make these distinctions? And I think that would be really helpful, both in the developer portal strategy in general, as well as in the future jury being able to judge, is this really good as an internal developer portal?
You guys are great. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Michael, Catalin, Sophie, Tom, Ellis, Lucas, and Bob, for taking the time for both being on the jury and for meeting with me today. Also, a thank you in advance for the jurors I will interview at the next gala: Emmeline Wang, Katrien Benzizel, Flavio Heraldez, and Liz Couteau. For more information about the jurors, please see the jury page on devportalawards.org. Now, I return your attention to our resident MC, Laura Vosch, and our first round of DevPortal Awards 2021 winners.